Hey, this is my 19.2 review on bouldering. So here's a graph showing the strengths and weaknesses and of a number of listed skills within bouldering, where I've scored myself out of 10 on each. So the first skill is using your toes to get onto the rocks. So this is when you specifically use your toes to climb on the rocks and not just your foot in general. So you really aim to utilize your toes and kind of bend your toes and really use them individually and not just your whole foot. So I scored myself 5 out of 10 for this, as I'd say it's probably a weakness of mine. I wasn't focusing on using my toes to begin with, and I was just using my feet. However, after a while of being in the session, I was instructed to focus on using my toes more. I did begin to do this, but it still felt uncomfortable and unnatural, so this was a weakness of mine. Another skill is hand-eye coordination, which is linked to bouldering. So this activity requires the simultaneous use of the hands and eyes, therefore hand-eye coordination is a vital component of bouldering. I would score myself a 6 out of 10 on this. I wouldn't say I have incredibly high hand-eye coordination, but it isn't significantly low either. I was easily able to look at where I was climbing whilst grabbing rocks with my hands. However, in more challenging situations, I'd have to focus a lot more on what I was grabbing onto so that I didn't fall off the wall, and it became far less natural for me. I'd say this was a weakness of mine, not a massive weakness, but still probably more of a weakness than a strength. Another relevant skill is upper body strength. So this is very important within bouldering. This relates to having the ability to pull yourself up the wall using your arms. I gave myself a 7 for this. I'd say it was one of my strengths, however I didn't give myself a score above this because I still think there is quite a lot of room for improvement. I was able to rely on my upper body at times in order to pull myself up the wall, but on steeper, more challenging walls it became fairly difficult to pull myself up the wall using my upper body. I also found that over time, as we got further into the session, my upper body fatigued slightly, reducing my ability to pull myself up the wall. I'd say this is probably a strength of mine. Another relevant skill within bouldering is flagging. Flagging is when you move a leg to the side of you in order to prevent your rotation off the wall. I gave myself a 5 out of 10 for this. I only learnt this skill towards the end of the session and began to use it briefly. However, I didn't have enough time to become familiar with it, and it's a weakness of mine. Another relevant skill within sailing, bouldering, a very relevant skill within bouldering is agility. So this is very significant, and the ability to move up the wall quickly, it links to the ability to move up the wall quickly and with ease. I'd say it's a weakness of mine. I wasn't particularly nimble when climbing, and at times slightly heavy on my feet, and this hindered me a little bit when I was climbing because I didn't have the ability to in maybe quite tricky situations use my agility to get me out of trouble and that enable me to move swiftly around the wall. So I scored myself 4 out of 10 for this, and it was certainly a weakness. Another relevant skill is balance. So it's important that you balance the entirety of your body weight so that you don't exert excessive amounts of pressure on certain parts of the body when on the climbing wall. So I'll class this as a weakness of mine. There were many occasions where I was far too reliant and was putting too much strain on my upper body. I never had the imagination or balance to put my body in complex positions which would be more comfortable and more stable. Therefore, my balance was quite poor, and this was a big problem. If my balance was more, if my body weight was more balanced when I was climbing, I definitely would have had a better performance. So this was poor, and I need to improve this to improve my general bouldering ability. So I scored myself 5 out of 10 for this, and it was a weakness. Another skill is slapping on steep walls. So this relates to thrusting upwards with your leg and hips as opposed to solely pulling yourself up with your arms. This was a weakness of mine, and I scored myself 4 out of 10. Far too often I was pulling myself up with my arms and my lower body was just static, so my slapping on steep walls was substandard, and it was a weakness. So another skill is precision of feet. So this relates to the ability to skillfully and accurately use your feet to maneuver around the wall effortlessly and rapidly. I'd say this is a weakness of mine. I scored myself 5 out of 10. I didn't really utilise my feet enough when attempting to climb up the wall. Most of the time I just pulled my feet along with me whilst pulling myself up using my arms, not actually using the power in my lower body. I'd have been far better off using my feet regularly to manoeuvre myself around the wall. It's just the fact that my quadriceps and hamstrings are definitely stronger than what my bicep and tricep muscles are, so using my leg muscles would have been much more beneficial. Another skill is down climbing. So this is when you climb safely back down the wall once you've reached the top. I scored myself 7 out of 10 for this, so it's a strength of mine, I would say. The majority of the time I was able to climb all the way back down the wall safely. However, there were some instances on more complex walls where I was unable to climb all the way back down, like a certain colour of grips, so I had no choice but to jump down. This is a bit dangerous and unsafe. An awkward landing could have maybe led to an injury, so this is why I couldn't score myself any higher than 7 on down climbing, but it was a strength. Another skill is smearing. So this is associated with bouldering. It's when you essentially smudge your foot into the climbing wall, and this increases friction, giving you more grip on the wall. So I scored myself a very poor 3 out of 10 on this. This is due to the fact that I really didn't use this skill much. There were probably 1-2 occasions at the very most when I used this, and I was unsure of how to use it and what scenarios to use it in, so I didn't utilise this well whatsoever, and it was definitely one of my biggest weaknesses. So now moving on to opportunities part of SWOT analysis. There are a number of ways that I can improve my skills within bouldering. I could buy a 1-month unlimited membership at Boulder Brighton where I could regularly go to practice and work on my skills and weaknesses in particular. I could have many instructed sessions where the instructor will show me how to carry out tasks and execute certain skills which I may be unsure of. Over time I'll practice these and turn them into strengths, helping me to develop and improve my general ability within bouldering. I can also, once I reach a good standard, test myself in a competitive environment, as competitions are held at the Boulder Brighton Centre, and this will show me how far I've come and how much I've developed my skills from when I first tried bouldering, when I first visited Boulder Brighton. Also, on top of this, we will be visiting Boulder Brighton again soon as a class, so I can go and try and work on things that I learned last time and learn some new skills also. The threats to these, however, I have a very busy lifestyle. I go to college every day, I have a part-time job and hobbies. This consumes a lot of my time. I don't have much spare time as it is really, so finding time to dedicate to the Boulder Centre will be tough. It costs £44 a month to use the facility at Boulder Brighton. I already have hobbies which are quite expensive, so it'd be hard for me to do this. And I have younger siblings who I regularly look after, and I regularly am required to look after them. So finding the time that if I have to look after them, then I can't go bouldering because there's obviously no way I can leave them. So that's also an issue and a threat to my opportunities. And here's my development plan, my 6-week plan on how I'm going to try and improve my ability within bouldering. I've made this specific, so all the elements included are specific to bouldering. I've tried to make it achievable and measurable, and also time bound because it's spread over a 6-week period. So firstly, to justify my development plan, I learned that from my first session, I learned that I must improve my physical capacity within bouldering in general to improve my bouldering performance. So my lower body strength and my endurance in particular was weak. So when I was climbing at Boulder Brighton, I found I was far too reliant pulling myself up with my upper body as opposed to using the power in my legs to propel myself up the wall. This meant I was limited within my climbing. I couldn't fully utilise my legs, and I want to work on this to regularly in order to improve the power in my legs. So I've added 3 lower body gym sessions throughout my 6-week programme to try to improve this. On top of this, when I went climbing, I felt that I fatigued quickly, decreasing my performance as the session went on. I have many gym sessions throughout my plan which have all gradually increased in duration, which will help to increase my muscular endurance, enabling me to work at a higher intensity for longer when climbing. To increase both my strength and endurance, I will need to do high weight with low reps, however short rest periods, so that I can also build my ability to repeat the exercise without fatiguing. An additional session which I include into my 6-week training program is a hand grip ball session. This will develop my hand finger strength. When I went bouldering, I identified that finger strength is fundamental when trying to climb a challenging wall, particularly with the very high level challenging colours. So my finger strength was almost nothing because I simply don't work on this and don't require this in my everyday life. So something I definitely need to work on to improve in bouldering is my finger strength. So yeah, I've included 3 of these hand grip sessions into my program. Moving on to techniques. So when I first went climbing, I was unfamiliar with specific techniques that were required for bouldering. I didn't have any knowledge on what flagging or smudging was, for example, and how to carry those out. Towards the end of the session, I was more familiar with these skills, but still unsure how to accurately perform them myself. I could describe them, but demonstrating them myself was another matter. So I've added some form of climbing session to work on my technique within each week. For weeks 1, 3 and 5, I'll pay for 1-to-1 sessions with a professional instructor who will guide me through a 1-hour session demonstrating various skills to help me improve and showing me how to execute these and what I need to do so I can improve at certain things. So from these, I should then have the knowledge and understanding of how to execute certain skills and in what scenarios they should be used. In the weeks after my 1-to-1 sessions, so 2, 4 and 6, I will then have 1-hour open sessions just individually going down there on my own at the centre to try to consolidate on what I've been taught and ensure that I fully understand everything and I can implement them without anyone there, just on my own. And eventually I'll have a much greater understanding of the skills and I'll use them more effectively, and this will massively enhance my bouldering ability. And moving on to agility, so I'd also like to improve on my agility to improve in bouldering. This was something which I was fairly weak at when I went there the first time. I'm not particularly flexible, so I don't find it easy to rapidly and smoothly move around the climbing wall. There are many ways I can improve this. So firstly, in my 6-week training program, there are many core workouts which will include things such as sit-ups, plank, side plank, crunches, leg raises. This will increase my range of movement at the midsection, allowing me to move more freely at the midsection when bouldering. To increase my core strength, these sessions will be high intensity and short duration with short rest periods between each exercise. Throughout the 6-week program, the intensity and duration of my core workout will increase to show progression, and there's also developmental and PNF stretching in my training program to improve my agility. In the first 4 weeks, I'm only going to do developmental stretching because my flexibility and agility will be at its lowest. And developmental stretching isn't as advanced as PNF and less testing essentially. So this will develop my flexibility and give me somewhere to start, and it will help me improve within my climbing as a result. So I'll be able to reach further to certain grips on the wall, and it will feel more comfortable reaching and stretching my body more. So in the final 2 weeks, my flexibility will be a lot higher than it was in the first 4. So I'll begin to participate in some PNF stretching. This is when you stretch to a specific point of discomfort and you then contract the muscle for 5 to 6 seconds before performing a controlled stretch further than you would normally for 30 seconds to increase my flexibility further. So to conclude, all of these training methods in my 6-week program will increase my range of movement, allow me to stretch further than I could previously, making it easier for me to quickly move around the climbing wall. And that's the end of my assignment 19.2 on my bouldering review.